everyone, Adrienne Lau here with Remax. Let's get started with our first video here. Today I'm going to talk about the 10 biggest pitfalls and things to look out for if you are going to sell your house for sale by owner. I'm not going to talk today about marketing and pricing and all of that. I'm going to assume that we're looking just for the procedural stuff, the paperwork and the paperwork prep, and then when you receive an offer. So let's get started. All right, number one, disclosures. Real estate disclosures are not optional in the state of Michigan. You are not exempt from disclosure because you're selling for sale by owner. They are a state law. So what that means, you can get the forms probably from your title company, but you do need to disclose any material deficiencies with the house. If you've had water in the basement, disclose. If you've had termites, disclose. If you've had fuel oil tanks, if you've had encroachments, easements, boundary line disputes, all of those things do need to be disclosed or you're going to be in a really tough spot after closing. All right, item number 2 is personal property and reserved items. So when you are getting ready to put the house on the market, take a look around. If you're still living in it, if there's anything attached to the house that you want to take with you, maybe a special mirror or shelf or curtains, all of that stuff, just make sure that the buyer knows up front which things are coming with the house and not, and put them in writing in the contract because that's the only way to be completely clear that the right things are staying with the house. Item number 3, special assessments and preliminary title. So before you ever show the house, before you ever do anything with marketing, the first thing that you should do is decide on your title company and get them to run a preliminary title commitment. This is going to answer a couple questions. Are there any liens that you're unaware of? This happens all the time. Probably a third of the files that we run will have some lien that didn't get properly extinguished, or just there's so many things I can't go into all the details. The other thing it's going to tell you is, are there any special assessments against the property? You might not even be aware because you're paying them through your regular taxes, but they will need to be paid off at closing because that's a lien on your title. Most special assessments have to be paid off. There are some that can be subordinated, some drain assessments that the buyer can assume, but again, you need to know going in because if you don't know, you can't put it in your contract. And if you don't put it in your contract, you are paying them. All right, items 4 and 5 relate to closing costs, transfer tax, and title insurance. In the state of Michigan, when the deed is recorded, in order to record the deed, you have to pay transfer tax. This is typically a seller expense, and it's 0.86% of the sales price. So think of it like sales tax, but it's not as expensive as sales tax. The other thing that the seller will typically pay for is the owner's policy of title insurance. This pays the title company to do the title research that we talked about and provides the new owner with an insurance policy that they're getting good, clear title. Typically, this again, it's based on the sales price. So, roughly it'll be like $1,200 or so on a $200,000 house, and it goes up and down from there. So just make sure to figure that into your net when you're looking at what you're actually going to walk away from closing. Okay, item number 6, tax prorations. Super confusing and super expensive. So everywhere around Michigan, taxes are prorated per a local custom, and they're all different. It's super confusing. Here in the greater Lansing area, we prorate on what we call a calendar year basis in arrears. So the buyer and seller are paying for their own days as if the bills cover that day. But other areas might assume that the bills from 2022 cover 2021, and so now the seller actually needs to pay the buyer back for those days, and that could be a big deal if you're selling. Similarly, other areas prorate in advance, and that could be an advantage to you as a seller. So it's really important that when you get your purchase agreement, you read that and you make sure you know how the taxes are being prorated. Okay, more closing cost stuff. Seller concessions. This is something that happens when a buyer asks the seller to cover some of their lender closing costs. Used to be super, super common, not so much the last couple years because the market has been very competitive, but as the market starts to shift, we may start to see some of this come back. So just something to be aware of and make sure you're building it into your understanding of what your net will be on an offer you receive. Point of sale counties. Here's another fun one. If you happen to have a well and septic, listen up. If you live in a county with point of sale requirements, you will be required by the county to provide clean well and septic to the county before you can sell. This becomes your expense as a seller. Locally, the point of sale counties are Shiawassee County and Ingham County. Clinton County is not, Eaton County is not, Ionia County is not. Outside of our area, I'm really not sure because I don't do a lot of business there. So just make sure that you're checking with your county because, again, this is going to be a big deal. If you need to pay for those inspections, you need to budget probably about $700 to do so. Pre-approval. You do not have an offer unless you have an offer and a pre-approval. So when you receive that offer, let's not even get excited until we see that the buyer is pre-approved and that they can actually buy the house. Please don't miss this step. It could cause you a lot of heartache if you do. And finally, deposits. So when the buyer writes an offer, just make sure that you are comfortable with the deposit that they're putting down and under what cases you would get to keep that deposit. Most offers are written with contingencies, which means if the buyer doesn't buy the house for those reasons, that they would retain the deposit. So just familiarize yourself. If you have any questions, definitely reach out. We'd love to help. Thanks.